Okay, if we could resume our seats. If some people can be helpful to gather the lost sheep out there. Let's wait for the rest to return. Okay, I hope you're more relieved and more refreshed for the next half of our time together. And the next topic is hearing the voice or the voices of our parents. And we have Poh Lin to come and share with us. So let's welcome her. Yeah. Okay, Poh Lin, just a quick introduction of you to all of us who are gathered here from the Presbyterian family. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do?
Sure. I'm a senior research fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies at the National University of Singapore. And I have been there for a couple of years. Before that, I was assistant professor at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, also at NUS. And I am a mother, I'm a wife to Owen and mother of 2 children. One of them is 7 years old, 8 years old? 7 years. 7 years old.
There's a gender bender. The 2 parents can't work it out.
The other one is 5 years old, going on 6. Yeah, they're both boys.
Okay, what are their names? Yeah.
My older son is Han. My younger son is Ray.
Han and Ray.
Yeah.
Han and Ray. Yeah. Thank you so much. You may have read Poh Lin's name. She writes ever so often for Straits Times, and she'll comment on things at Channel News Asia. So thank you for coming to share with us. What's your heartbeat and why do you do research in this area? Okay, let's welcome her again.
Thank you all for coming, and also wanted to just say that I'm very humbled by opportunity to stand here. I don't feel fully qualified because my children are still quite young. So as a parent, I'm still learning a lot, and I'm very imperfect parent. I'm coming here actually also from the perspective of the work that I do on a regular basis, which I'll be sharing with you in a second. Of course, this work is situated in the National University of Singapore, Institute of Policy Studies. I'm not coming here as a representative of the Institute. I'm coming here actually as a sister in Christ who's been looking at this area of work, but not leaving my religion at the door when I come in. Right? When I look at things, I look at it as a whole person. And so I'd like to share with you some of my deepest, inmost thoughts when I examine the work, what's happening in Singapore really with families, with parenthood. So let me just jump right in. You may, of course, have read in the news or heard, various speeches from policymakers in Singapore about the fertility rate in Singapore. I think we can't escape it as long as we turn on the news about how Singapore doesn't have enough babies. Last year, the big news was that Singapore's fertility rate fell for the first time below 1. So now we are way below the replacement rate, which is often called 2.1. And if you are at 1, that means you're at even less than half of the replacement rate. This year, the fertility rate made history again, but for a different reason. It's because there is, unlike in previous cycles, no jump in the fertility rate even though it was a dragon year. Right? So historically, you can see from the figure below you that every 12 years, we would have a jump in the number of babies born in Singapore because people want to give birth in the dragon year. Last year, we didn't have a large dragon cohort for the first time. So a lot of my work is looking at this issue related to fertility and studying some of the policies that are related to population in Singapore. And naturally, also as not just a worker, but also a person myself who is living life as somebody who's married and having children, these things are something that I reflect on and from another perspective. So some of the, one of the reasons why we are seeing this decline in people becoming parents or having children in Singapore have been kind of variously proposed by different groups of people. If you ask Singaporeans, right, why they are not having children, I think that you can see that a number of reasons appear. Some people will actually cite issue related to cost of children. It's too expensive. We are not having kids because it's too expensive. Some people will say it's not just about the money, right? Having children is just too stressful. It's not a pleasant thing to have children anymore. And some people will say, well, you know, I would like to have children or more children, but I'm not going to do so because I have other priorities in life. I have to care about whether my job accommodates for whether I want to have kids, okay? So I think that majority of us in this room, many of us, actually are people who maybe are here because we are interested in hearing about parenting. So many of us, by selection, may be parents. But we may have heard these sentiments from maybe our own adult children, our nephews and nieces, or other young people who are saying that they don't maybe foresee themselves getting married. They don't foresee themselves becoming parents. It's not something on their agenda. Or even if they do, they may like to be parents, but they're not going to be parents. These might be some of the reasons that are most salient to them, or most likely to be, you might be hearing from them saying something like that. Another reason I think that didn't make it on this particular list, but I've heard a lot, is that people don't want to become parents, or they're not going to have more, because they don't feel that they can be a good parent, right? Either because they are not disposed towards children, I don't really like children, or they will say something like, I'm not mentally well, I'm not physically well enough to be parents. So let us unpack, right, some of these reasons. Because when you ask people a question that is very complex in nature, right, that comes out of actually a whole set of different streams of consideration, the reason they give you may not really reflect some of the deeper considerations that actually amount to this final answer, right? So let's unpack a little bit about what people are actually saying when they give these reasons, right? What does it mean when you say that children are too expensive? I think that there is an underlying kind of belief system that people are actually referring to, right, when they make these statements. So what does it mean when you say that there's financial costs that are keeping you from having children? Basically, you're saying that there are a lot of things that I have to buy, or I can buy, that will make my children thrive. What does it mean when you say that it's too stressful to have children? Well, you're saying that there are a lot of things that I must do so that my children can be successful, so that I can thrive in life. What does it mean when you say that I'm not going to have more children because I find it difficult to manage work? Well, again, it has something to do with the fact that you believe that you have to work so that you can get the money, so that you can buy the things that your children, your family requires. But then that exchange of time for money makes it so that you don't have the time to do the things that you must do, right? So you regard children basically as kind of like almost like a production process, like a factory, where you must pour in all kinds of resources. You've got to pour in money, and you've got to pour in time. Also, why don't people sometimes say that they are going to make good parents? It's again back to the kind of basic understanding that if you cannot buy those things, you cannot do those things with children, then you wouldn't be able to give children a good opportunity in life. You know, they wouldn't have a life that's actually worth living. So these are some of the, I think, if you listen to these statements, some of the belief system aspects of belief systems that are coming up. Now, I may be wrong, and we could have a conversation further about this, but I think there's really a lot of pointing to what parents must do, what parents must provide, and the fact that you must make everything perfect, all right, before you become a parent. And that is what you need to do. I think that why people think this way. So one of the reasons why we have this kind of very prevalent belief system has a lot to do with the way that we are situated, the way that the life cycle works, really, right? So this is really a figure trying to show how parents and children kind of both work together in order to produce or co-produce what right here we call child quality. But really, if you think about it, how children then manage to be successful in the system, whether it's the educational system or the labor market system, right? And it's a division of labor from parents as well as children. So when children are very young, so if you look at it, it's kind of like opposites, right? Okay, so when children are very young, who's responsible for children's ability to kind of like be brought up in order to be able to pass examinations, be able to be prepared for the systems? It's really parents kind of pulling their kids along and making sure that they're able to be prepared for the primary school system, maybe even up to the PSLE and further, right? Parents play a big role. Relative to children, why? Because have you ever seen children who are naturally interested in doing practice exams? Or children who are naturally attracted to, instead of going to play, sitting at home and learning how to add or subtract or divide? Not really necessarily, right? Because they don't know necessarily what's going to lie, what's waiting what's waiting for them after this particular stage of life. So they need a guiding hand. They need somebody to advise them and look out for them, right? So parents play that role of being their advisor and even being the ones who kind of plan for them, buy the resources for them, right? Whether it be a toy that teaches you like very fundamental words, or kind of cards. Sometimes parents will buy these cards for children. What is 2 + 1? And then you have to flip the card and the answer is 3. Right? Parents do these things. They put in a lot of effort. And children don't. They don't until they grow up a little bit more. And then they start being more kind of contributing more to this process. So there is some kind of, there's a kind of crisscross in terms of the contributions that parents and children put in. And what does it mean? So if we accept that this is the general way that it works for parents and children, of course not just today, but for a long time, this is the way that it works. What does it mean for parents? It means that for the first kind of early development part of our children's lives, they depend greatly on parents, and as a response to that, a lot of parents these days feel a lot of fear and guilt. And there are different things. I mean, fear and guilt are related, but fear actually relates to the fact that you are worried that your children will somehow be unhappy or disadvantaged later in life, right? You really don't want that to happen. The other aspect of it is guilt, which is that it's not just that your children may be facing a worse future if you don't try hard to push them, but that you are complicit. You are responsible for that happening because you should have been the driving force for them when they were younger. So I think that kind of burden being placed on parents is what people are expressing. When they say that, it's costly, I need to buy the educational resources, I need to send them to ballet, I need to send them to tuition classes. This is what they're talking about, right? They are the ones who are responsible for helping children to be prepared for the challenges in life when they're younger. So this kind of fear and guilt is, of course, what we hear, reflective of what we hear from parents when they say that it's hard to bring up children, it's difficult to have children. So let me talk a little bit about why what I think from a Christian's perspective, this is not the right way to think about it. Of course, the first thing that we would respond to, if we see the way that the world is going, is that it cannot be a healthy thing for the country, for us, actually as a species, for us not to be able to reproduce ourselves, right? I mean, it is not in a very purely biological sense a healthy symptom when population cannot replace itself. There must be something wrong going forward. I mean, from that perspective. So why would it be unhealthy? What is the reason behind it being unhealthy? Maybe there's a good reason, maybe a noble reasons for why people are not having children, right? But that also, in some sense, it's also possible that the reasons why people don't have children actually may not be justified, right? They're thinking about it the wrong way. So when I look at it from a personal perspective, I think of it obviously from a biblical perspective. I think about what the Bible teaches us. So the first thing that I think the Bible tells us is not to rely too much on what money can buy, which is a lot of what people talk about, right? Financial costs, time costs. Not everything is about what the things that we can buy or the things that we must do as parents. I kind of put a picture here of an apple, 2 apples actually. One is a fresh apple, the other one is a rotten apple. And I wanted to put it in to kind of allude to the cases that we have seen among many of us, where siblings brought up in the family turn out very differently. They may have the same set of parents, they have the same kind of inputs, the same pressures that are put on them, but one responds as well or does well in life, the other one doesn't. And the reason is that a lot of what actually determines our success in life is simply out of our control. It's not within our control. So the way that we act is very kiasu, right? It's trying to make sure that we can do whatever we can, but actually looking at the kind of set of variation in all of the inputs that ultimately determine where a person lands out in life, what we put in is but a fraction, right? So people feel responsible and people feel guilty, but is that really reflective of the truth? It's not really reflective of the truth if you think about the fact that so many things that are outside of our control. What does the Bible say? The Bible says that it's God himself who guides us along the right paths. So we may want to put our children on the right path. You put them in a Christian school, right? You try really hard to make sure that they can meet the criteria so that they can get into the right, into the correct scheme, so that they can then be admissible to that school. But in the end, even though you try to lay out the path is not set by ourselves only, right? God himself will guide us. God himself is the one who decides how things are going to turn out for them. And if we don't have this recognition, what's going to end up happening is that when you have this guilt and this fear always lying in your hearts as parents, it's going to pass down to the next generation. And it's not fair to them. So we know that mental health is poor among youth today, right? One of the reasons why, actually, also, is that if you ask youth, why are you so stressed today? Why are you so unhappy? They will say it's because my parents want me to do well. A lot of youth will communicate that. So because we mistakenly think that we are the ones responsible for our children's success in life, we then pass this down to them, which is really unfair. So I want to make this first point, that we must learn to let go a little bit. Don't blame ourselves, and understand that a lot of things are things that the children themselves are going to work out for themselves, right? We can't control the whole process. Second of all, I think is if you look at the second reason why the way that we go about things, this belief system is wrong, is that there is too much fixation on personal achievement. Of course, it comes partly from the fact that if you look at us historically, we are a young country. And we just came from the brink of extreme poverty, right? So we are a country that still thinks about survival, how to survive in these times. And we think of ourselves as needing to prove ourselves. We need to prove that we are contributors to the society, otherwise we are not worthy. Right? So we fixate a lot about our status, what we are bringing to the table, what are our achievements. And part of the way that we think about achievement is financial success. Another way that we think about personal achievement is educational attainment, right? But I think that having gone through life myself, I mean, I'm not really that qualified to say because I'm still kind of in the middle. I'm still not, I think, at the age where I can speak out of the wisdom of my experiences. But maybe from just a very personal perspective, to share with all of you, I came from a relatively poor background. I had to worry about whether my family would be able to pay their bills, electricity bills, phone bills, and so forth when I was a teenager. And coming from that background, then growing up, I attended some of the best schools in the world. In university, I went to Princeton, which is very well ranked. I got my PhD from a very highly ranked university as well. I've seen kind of like a broad spectrum of people from very low educational backgrounds to people with very high educational backgrounds. Today at NUS, of course, I'm surrounded by people who are much smarter than myself, who are very well educated. And from my way of thinking, as somebody who has kind of met people from all kinds of backgrounds, I don't see that coming from a better going to a better school removes that anxiety, gives you a greater sense of inherent happiness or joy in life, right? I almost every year go back and meet up with my friends from Princeton and see how they're doing and talk to them about the way that they think about life, how they're doing. And I see them basically having exactly the same set of issues that everybody else faces, right? So even if we work hard and we send our children to the best schools, if they kind of, get there, that's great, but it doesn't mean that they have solved our life's problems. So we fixate a lot about putting our children on the right path, but it is not a guarantee of happiness. It's not a guarantee of joy. What does give us joy, and this is also from my own personal perspective as a Christian who didn't accept the Christian faith when I was younger, is that it is faith in Jesus Christ. It is knowing Jesus that actually gives us this kind of satisfaction in life. The Bible verse that I put here is from 1 Peter, when the Christians were facing extreme persecution. They were in very tough circumstances. They're not well off, but they had inexpressible and glorious joy from the fact that they believed in Christ. In Singapore today, we're getting richer and richer. You might have seen statistics about household median wealth reaching now 5 figures. But we also know that this doesn't translate necessarily to happiness and well-being. And this is borne out by studies. Making us richer and richer doesn't necessarily deliver us a lot of bang in terms of well-being. Right. And finally, from my perspective as an academic, it doesn't make sense to have this kind of belief system because it's actually poor investment. It's a poor investment strategy. What parents are doing, actually, a lot of it is over-investing at the start and under-investing at the end. Why do I say that? So over-investing in the start, because we think that it really matters what we do, right, when they're young. Because the children can't provide for themselves, they can't really plan for themselves, so we're doing a lot of this kind of work. We make sure that they are really good in English, they can read already before even entering P1 for some of us, right, that they take ballet and music lessons. And we do this like to the detriment of our well-being in some cases, even to our mental well-being. And then we kind of let go more and more because after all, children grow up, they have their own ways of thinking, they start to let go. And in the end, there's a perspective that they are leading their own lives. I think that this kind of way of thinking doesn't really gel with what I understand from the Bible. So I quote here Proverbs, 17, 9. I'm also myopic, so please forgive me. 6. Okay. Children's children are a crown to the aged, and parents are the pride of their children. So I ask myself, is this true? Are parents today the pride of their children or not? This year, Straits Times ran an article saying that there are young adults, interviewing young adults who severed ties with their parents because they think that filial piety should go both ways. I think there's more and more examination of the relationship between adults and their parents, right? A lot of people actually don't feel that their parents are actually very good parents to them. Some of them will reject their parents as being, a very commonly used term is narcissistic, right? Abusive to them. So if you think that just investing a lot in, children and trying to express your love through investing in them when they are young will definitely lead to a good relationship later because they understand that you did this out of love, that's not necessarily going to happen. In fact, it's really very possible that your children actually reject you at the end because you under-invested in them at the end, right? Okay. So, in my view, there should be a long-term investment strategy that we think about when we think about being parents. Right, in the short run, I think that you can, like I said, let go. Give your children a bigger stake in managing themselves because we can't control everything. And we need to tell ourselves that we can't control everything. Some of these things are really in the hands of somebody above us, God himself. Okay? And it's good for children to fail sometimes, even in substantial ways, right? If you tell them, if you really tell them off every time they do something wrong, then they won't be able to differentiate between when they do something really wrong that needs a talking to versus when it's something that they can kind of mediate for themselves, they can figure out for themselves, right? If your voice comes in and you're upset too much at even a minor mistake, that kind of message will not get through, okay? And I think it's also important to let your children be able to be happy even if they don't make it to the top stratum of society, right? Even if they don't get into top school, I think that when parents emphasize too much on success, right? They're sending the wrong message. They're telling their children, hey, I'm not going to respect you. Nobody's going to respect you unless you are, getting A's and unless you're going to the right schools. That's not helping them. That's not necessarily helping them. It's actually sending them a message that can be very damaging to them in the long run. If we want to, instead be investing more in the long run, I think that one really important thing is that when you're, of course, many of you here are more experienced parents than me, but your relationship changes with your child over time. When they are young, they come to you, run to you, you're their whole world. They hug you, they love you, they smother you with kisses. This is a really opportune time to make hay. This is when you build credit through relationship building. This credit later will come in useful because your children will have their own lives, right? They will have their own thinking. They may think that your thinking is wrong, but this credit is needed for you to kind of shoulder the relationship. Keep it strong. Keep it something that will survive any difference in opinion. Right? A lot of young people these days, I think the majority will say that it is wrong to say that LGBTQ relationships are wrong, for example, right? A lot of young people believe that. And if you, as a Christian, say that you don't agree with that, it can actually lead to a kind of schism in your relationship. What can allow you to survive that schism is actually that credit, right? The relationship that you've already built up with your kids. So this kind of long-term credit, I feel, might be an important part of the strategy. I think the other one is actually having in yourselves a good understanding of kind of like it sounds kind of pretentious, but kind of a good sense of what is the meaning of life. By that I mean actually that your life should not be built around them. Your life should be built around something higher, right? And that is really important because they will have their own lives as well. And it's not fair to them if you actually invest so much in them, hope so much for them, and build your life so much for them that it becomes kind of smothering, right? You need to be able to have your own lives. And that is actually a commandment, I think, in the Bible, right? It cannot be that your life is about children. Your lives cannot be about your children. The life has to be about God and your service to God. And that relates to the third point, which is that I think that it is our duty also to be a kind of a pillar of moral strength to our parents, to our children. And that is very difficult to do. I do that very badly. But I am aware that this is something that we must do. We must be a moral constant. So we don't bend to our children when they have beliefs that are separate from ours, simply because we want to maintain a good relationship. We don't say, okay, I think you're right, all right, because I want you to come home and listen to me, right, and still love me. No, I think that it really is a disservice to our children. We must be a moral constant to them, which means that actually through life, just like when they were younger, they still need guidance. They still need to be able to kind of figure out their way in life, right? A lot of youngsters feel stressed out and they don't know what they're doing in life. And if we, the older generation, don't provide this constant to them, don't have a check, we don't provide guidance to them, I think that we are kind of failing to live up to the duties that are given to us, right? So how do we do that? It's actually through kind of constant self-vigilance, right? We must have a separate life, but by caring for ourselves. Not just caring for them, but caring for ourselves and looking at ourselves and making sure that we are in a good condition, spiritually, physically, mentally. Okay. What I do personally is that I actually spend some time reflecting on myself. So I kind of just quickly share what I do with myself. So of course, I'm Chinese, Singaporean. So what I do is that just as I ran away from Christianity when I was younger and I came back, I examine my own beliefs. And the other set of beliefs that really influenced me is actually Confucianism. Why do I say that? Because Singapore is a very Confucian society. It's a lot of unspoken things about the way we think is actually from a other system. So what I do is I actually examine what these belief system that influenced me actually say. So I read the 论语. For some of you who don't know, it's called Analects. Some of you might be familiar with the term 儒家思想. So I read basically the writings of Confucius every day for about 5 minutes a day. 5 to 10 minutes a day, depending, right? So what this allows me to do is that when I look at a different belief system, I'm able to examine the beauty of Jesus Christ from another angle. So in the Analects, they often describe somebody called 君子, somebody who is a superior person. And I'm amazed oftentimes at how closely the description of a superior person is actually describing Jesus Christ. The other way that I think that I serve God from doing this is actually to try to understand another belief system that a lot of people around us hold who are not Christian, so that we can properly communicate the gospel to them in a way that allows us to also be coming from their side. Okay? So from an evangelical point of view, we cannot say we just need to study the Bible and that's all the things that we do, because we don't actually do that in our life, in our daily life, right? For example, during Esther's talk, you talk about referring to the DSM, right? Okay, that's not from the Bible, right? If I'm right, right? We actually gain wisdom from all kinds of other sources. So it doesn't have to be, this is just my example, but from other sources of wisdom to try, or any other things that you can do, you can think about, that actually helps to build you up as a person. It has helped me to examine my morals, helped me to think about whether I'm even meeting worthy standards, and helped me be a better child to my parents, better parents to my children, and a better employee. Because actually, if you know the Analects, they actually speak a lot about being a good worker and being a good child and being a good spouse. So these are being a good friend, actually, I should say. So these are things that actually I think is a self-investment, and this is just one example. So for example, I would say that one thing that has really influenced me and sorted out the way of thinking, and it's very consistent in Christianity, is actually this particular saying, right? 君子治于天下也，无事也，无莫也，义之于彼. So my rough translation, which is just may not be exactly perfect, is saying that the virtuous person, with regard to worldly affairs, does not side with or against anyone or anything. His measuring stick is righteousness. And it sounds like something maybe quite commonsensical to a lot of you, but for me, it actually changed the way I think. So it helped me to understand that when I give to charity, I don't just give to a Christian charity because it's a Christian charity. That Christian charity must meet standards of efficiency or cost effectiveness before we should give it to it. That's the way that we would prevent, that's the way that we build the best name for Christ. In the same way, I also think that it tells me what my expectations of me as a worker, as a person might be, right? I can't just say I'm a Christian, right? That is enough. No, even as a Christian, I must be at the standard, at least at the standards that other people might be judged at, right? I don't get a pass just because I'm Christian. In fact, God, 1 Peter also tells us that the Father that we call upon is impartial, right? He judges us by our works. So this kind of, and the parallel, of course, that I think of is in Joshua. So when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" And the answer would have been obviously, like, "I'm for you, I'm here to help you." But the angel of the Lord said, "Neither. But as commander of the army of the Lord, I have come." Neither, right? He's not on the side of Israel or against Israel's enemies. He's on the side of righteousness. So this is just an example of how it really changed me as a person in the way I think. This is a really tiny screen. I hope that you can see it. If not, let me read out a little bit. So this is a conference about voices, right? So these are voices between parents and adult children. And let me just give an example in the relationship area. So if you look at the first one, so when parents are interacting with their children, these are adult parents, older parents talking to their adult children. When the adult children say, when the parent says, "I'm interested in you," the adult child's perception might be, "You are interfering with my life, right? You are medicine in my life." If the parent says, "I want to be there for you," then the voice of the adult child might come back, "Well, if you want to be there for me, then I need you to fulfill some conditions first." If the parent says, "I'm concerned about you," the child might respond, "Well, you are invading my space. You need to respect me. Please stop stalking me. Please stop trying to contact me, especially in ways that are public," right? And it goes on and on, right? It's about, for example, if we jump to the last one, "You're hurting me. Can't you see that you're hurting me by not wanting to have a relationship with me?" And the child might come back and say, "You're being narcissistic. You're being selfish," right? It's all about you and what you want. You can see all these type of different responses, perspective-wise, from the elderly parent and the adult child. So what characterizes, I think, a lot of these perception from parents is sometimes it's reasonable and sometimes it's a little bit on the needy side, right? The parent is trying very hard to pull the child, sometimes to do what they don't want, even though it might be quite reasonable, like coming to a family event, coming to a gathering, telling the child to come and talk to me. But the child's attitude towards the adult parent is disrespectful, right? The adult child may actually have an attitude that's very adversarial. Why might that be? It actually might be because the elderly parent in the adult child's eyes doesn't deserve respect, or maybe perceived as not deserving of respect. And that, I feel, is kind of speaking to the underinvestment in the long run that I'm talking about. Why is it that an adult child might take on this, from our perspective, very, very unethical, very un-Singaporean way of thinking, right? It may be because you're so eager to help them be successful, but in the end, you're not investing in yourself, right? In building up that relationship, partly by making sure that the image of yourself in your children's eyes are of that quality so that they would not respond to you in such a way. So I think that we really need to invest in ourselves as well. Yeah, so finally, just to end this by saying, how does God himself do it? God is also a parent. He calls himself a father. So how does God himself come to us? How does he teach us? So first of all, he is invested in relationship building. He actually took on flesh, right, through his son, because Jesus Christ, who is God, so that we can know him better. He helps us to find joy through faith and righteousness. He teaches us the meaning of life, even in suffering. So he teaches us that, we must take up the cross, right? He doesn't tell us to make sure that we are very successful in our studies and in our workspace necessarily. He tells us to be successful in ways that are more core to the meaning of life. He helps us to learn from mistakes. And he doesn't just say, okay, you made a mistake, but I understand how this is the way you are. You're just beautiful the way you are. He doesn't say that. He actually helps us to change, right? He doesn't coddle us, and he sets out the perfect moral standard, actually. He's always there for us after we make mistakes. He's a forgiving parent. He sticks to his morals, even if he has to separate himself from us. And that's very, very important, that he is that moral constant that gives us, all of us, right, as Christians, great comfort in our lives so that we have this anchor in our lives, right? And also, God is always joyful and always very independent, full of his own glory, right? Covered in his own glory. So I think that, it gives us a really good example of what we should be like because he is the perfect parent. So again, I actually don't know that much about parenting. However, I think that God knows a lot, so I'm very grateful to have this chance to just stand here and learn from everybody. Thank you.